Well, good day, everyone. Hey, as time gets closer to the return of the Lord, I think a lot of us are coming up with more revelations about just exactly what's going to go down and the various events. Um, Most of the people who are studying the Bible intently and comparing this information and the Word with the prophetic words and visions people are having, we've all come to the realization that it's not a simple rapture. That when the Lord comes for His faithful, it's not going to be just a rapture event and that's it. My thoughts are this, and this is my speculation only, and I've shared it with a lot of people, and I have a couple videos that talk about it. But I see three clear different departures over a 47-day period. And I'm going to go through this really quickly. I want to show you something that just came to light. The first departure is a quiet departure, in my opinion. It's the elect of God. That's 144,000 on day one. That is all the little children and a portion of the bride. And I divide the bride up into two parts. I'm saying there's two parts of the bride. This is just me because I see it in Scripture. I believe there's a Mary bride, and I believe there's a Martha bride. Mary sat at the feet of Jesus, and Martha complained about it. Not that Martha's any less faithful, but I just see Mary going on this initial departure to take care of the little children. I've seen that in Scripture where there's going to be folks that leave and take care of the little children when all the little children of the world are taken. But and then on day 7, and the 3 days of darkness is day 4, day 5, day 6. Darkness comes on day 4. That's when the elect will rise and shine on day 4. And the bride of Christ will still be there, a portion of the bride. And then the wise virgins and the guests who accepted the wedding invitation, they will all be translated to the wedding celebration through a door. They're not going to be raptured. This group is not going to be violently kidnapped. They're going to be translated, and you can see this in these verses right here. This is a translation. This is not a violent rapture. So I want to discriminate between the bride and the wise virgins. And let me jump to Scripture real quick. So we know the parable of the 10 virgins. The very first verse has this verse here. It says, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. This is the ESV version. Went out to meet the bridegroom. Let's look at note B. What does note B say? It says some manuscripts add, and the bride. So let's read it again. The kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom and the bride. So the bride and the bridegroom were together. So they went to meet the virgins. The virgins are simply bridesmaids. If you look at the NLT translation, they use the word bridesmaids, and that's a better translation, in my opinion. If you go to the Wycliffe translation, this is John Wycliffe. He translated the Bible before the King James, before this was one of the original English translations, and look what he puts. The kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the husband and the wife. There it is again. So when the midnight call comes, the bride's already been taken. And I say the bride has been taken on day 1. And the midnight call to go and gather the wise virgins, this is the day 6, 7 event. This is going on day 4, day 5, day 6. And there's the discrimination between the bride and the virgins. Let me look at the original. In the New Testament, there's actually Hebrew manuscripts. It's called Aramaic Hebrew. This is a website. You can go search this. And these are different variation manuscripts of Aramaic Hebrew. And look, the English translation of this Hebrew, which none of us can read, by these scholars, all have the bride, bridegroom and the bride, bridegroom and the bride. So when Matthew 25, when this parable was being told, and you look at the events down here, the foolish and the wise, this is the bridegroom is with the bride. So there's a different set of groups. Now, how do I get this idea that there's two types of brides? So I look at the bride as being 3 different parts. This is just me. This is my opinion after listening to hundreds of prophetic words. I see Lazarus as the warrior bride. That's the 144,000. There's references in the Old Testament that there's an army of the Lord. That's the warrior bride. I see Martha as a portion of the bride and Mary as a portion of the bride. So when Jesus came to raise Lazarus on the fourth day he died and was dead for 4 days, Martha is the one that came out to meet him on the road. Mary, she remained seated in the house. When I read that, the Spirit told me she's already in God's house. In my Father's house are many mansions, many rooms. That's what I got when I read that. So she's already taken. And then we see this here, that Martha comes out to meet the Lord on the road. And this event here is equivalent to day 4 on my timeline, which day 4 is the third day of the beginning of darkness. And on that day, the warrior bride, 144,000 who were taken in spirit only to be trained in a supernatural dimension for 3 days, their bodies are left behind from day 1 through day 4. On day 4, they rise and shine. And on day 5, the bride transform, and the warrior bride, the Martha bride, go out into the first harvest for 2 or 3 days and gather in the wise virgins and the guests. Now, when this translation happens, of course, the warrior bride's already transformed. And the Martha bride, she transformed also. But my sense is the wise virgins and the guests who accept the wedding invitation, they are not transformed. They enter into heaven in their natural bodies. Anyway, let me give you the justification on why I see this. If you go to Psalm 45, you see the discrimination here. And here's a reference, Psalm 45. Here's a reference down here. It makes a reference to, it says, all glorious is the princess in her chamber. Who has a chamber? Remember the bride goes into her chamber? This princess is the bride. Look what it says. In many colored robes she is led to the king, with her virgin companions following her. With joy and gladness they are led along as they enter the palace of the king. So these verses right here, these discriminate between the bride and her virgin companions, her virgin bridesmaids. That's where we can see this discrimination between the bride and the virgins and the bridesmaids. So my sense is that this Matthew 25, when the Lord, at the midnight call, when he comes, this is coming here. Actually, it's the second departure event, when the darkness comes. Anyway, with that, guys, have a good day. God bless you.